Okay, so here we are with a Mcfarlane Toys Superpowers. That's right, Superpowers is back, and this is Batman. And I'm looking forward to opening up this guy. Like I said when I did the review of the Batwing, I did not have Superpowers Batman yet at the time, which is why I used the Iron Winch Kenner Batman from the Dark Knight collection and Batman Returns. Uh, but now that I have the proper Batman, we're going to put him in the Batwing and see how he fits in the Batwing, because that's how it's intended to be. This is the Batman that's supposed to go in that. And I do want to say that I have already got one of these Superpowers figures, and unfortunately I don't have a video of it, because even though I shot a video of it, the camera on my computer malfunctioned, so I do not have an unboxing video for Superman. But I do have Superman, and I wanted to show him off a little bit. And I'll talk about Superman some in this video, so that way we cover Superman also, because I don't want to neglect the Man of Steel. So and since the other video didn't work out, we can fit Superman into this one. So Batman won't mind sharing the spotlight with his old friend, the world's finest team. So let's have a look at the artwork and the logo at the top. And we can see that even though this is very much in line with the Superpowers artwork that we're familiar with from the 1980s, as far as like the packaging design, where it's got the classic Superpowers logo and the thick yellow stripe lined by two red stripes with stars on them. It's a great DC Comics background, and it's in the colors of both Superman and Wonder Woman. The stars shooting out in the logo is very reminiscent of the Linda Carter television series and the opening of that show, how it had the stars shooting out in the same way. So it's got a very classic DC Comics look to it. And I remember when I first saw the original Superpowers figures in the 80s, how it just seemed so natural to me, and the packaging was so perfect. And I loved that Superpowers logo. Like, it's just, we'll look at it on the back so we can see the whole thing, but it's just got such a strength and a power to it, and I really appreciated that. So we can see up here, where they used to say what the power action of the figure was, it just says new for 22 in a few different languages, because unfortunately these figures don't have power action, which was a big part of the appeal of the original Superpowers figures. But, you know, we are now in the 21st century, and that would make this figure a lot more expensive, I think. And he only costs like $10, so which is pretty good for an action figure. The Mcfarlane Toys logo down at the bottom, it's basically the Mcfarlane Toys logo that we're familiar with. If I can borrow... Well, actually, that one's not on this one. That one's just got the Spawn logo. This will be a figure I'll be opening shortly, which is the Red Hood. Like I said, I got them piling up. I got a lot of action figures to open. But I have seen this on a lot of toys before, but they did, I think, make it slightly more Kenner looking. But not going as far as NECA goes on their logos. And, of course, the more modern DC logo up here, which I don't believe there was a DC logo at all on the older Superpowers. I could be mistaken. But we look at the back, we got cross-cell artwork, which only has 3 figures so far, although there are 4 figures in this series, actually, so far. If that's not a teaser for the next episode, I don't know what is. But you see Batman, figure I have in my hand right now, Superman, figure I already showed you, and Darkseid, which Darkseid is based on the new 52 version, which is disappointing to me because I hate that design. But I'm going to buy this figure anyway because I want to support this line. So, says collect them all in 3 different languages. Got the Mcfarlane Toys social media information down here. And we got a bio on the back, which is a full bio in English. I'm going to go ahead and read it. And I think that these use a lot of the same text that's on the trading cards that come with the multiverse figures. But since this is a different line, I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing anyway. As a child, Bruce Wayne watched as his parents were brutally killed in Gotham City's Crime Alley. Traumatized by their deaths, he devoted his life to becoming the world's greatest weapon against crime. Batman. It actually says the Batman, but the term the Batman has been ruined for me by that terrible Robert Pattinson movie. So I can't use the definite article anymore. He's just Batman. To become the ultimate vigilante, the Dark Knight disciplined his mind and body to reach the pinnacle of mental and physical superiority in his relentless pursuit of justice. Again, unlike the Robert Pattinson version, who is a complete loser. So, and also, I want to point out the figure on here. While most of the artwork on the original Superpowers was done by either Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, artwork from his style guide, or it was artwork done by Jack Kirby himself, especially on the Fourth World characters. This one features artwork by Jim Lee, because this is, like, it's not the most modern version of Batman, but it's a more modern version of Batman than what we saw in the original Superpowers, because it's supposed to be based on his Hush costume. Although I have some nitpicks about that, but we'll get into that once I open up the figure. So let's go ahead and do that. Looks like the bottom is going to be easiest because there's not any glue at the bottom in the middle where we have this little, little place where you can stand the figure on the shelf if you want to. And when I found this one and the next figure I will review, again teasing, they were in a big dump at Walmart. So they are going all in on this line, and that makes me happy. So one thing that really bugged me when I opened up Superman, and it's another problem with this one, is you can see they decided for some stupid reason to hold this cape in with this plastic tab. And you know I hate the plastic tabs, but this just made me hate it even more, because, as I will show you with Superman, it leaves a permanent hole in the cape. Look at that. You can see through it. I don't know why they decided to do something so stupid. Whoever made that decision should be fired. Because now I have an action figure that's permanently damaged because of how they chose to package this. So again, like this Superman figure, if that review hadn't have malfunctioned, I said I would have given this Superman figure a 10. But the hole in the cape, I had to take a couple of points off, so it only gets a 7. We'll see if I'm as generous with this Batman figure. And thankfully, there's no rubber tabs holding Batman himself into the package. So, I'd like to find the guy who invented these rubber tabs and just kind of slap him in the face. It's kind of... he ruined my action figures. So, and it's got the traditional C-clip that holds the cape on, like Superpowers has. The fabric is not made out of the same type of fabric as those Superpowers capes, though. It's more like a kind of thing, like a ribbon on a birthday present or something. So Superman has the same type of fabric, and you can see they made his cape way too long. It like goes down to the bottom of his feet, like it's a Henry Cavill Superman. But this is supposed to be like a Bronze Age Superman, so really the cape should only come to the top of the boots. And the emblem on his cape is gigantic, like ridiculously huge, like it takes up his whole back. Superman looks a lot like the original Superpowers figures, but oops, drop Batman. His stance is a little closer together at the bottom of the feet, and to me it makes it look like he's kind of got to go pee. So, as opposed to the older one where it was a little more spread out and looked a little more dynamic. The sculpt is not exactly the same. You can see the hair is a little longer on the top than the original Superpowers figure was. And I kind of wonder if there's legal reasons behind that, like they couldn't do the exact sculpts of the original Kenner figures for whatever reason. So they had to come up with their own sculpts and make them just slightly different in various ways so that, again, for legal reasons. So looking at Batman, something that I suspected with Superman when I was looking at him is I noticed that Superman's belt is actually a separate piece that's glued on. And I was thinking to myself, is it possible that they just reused the same torso for different figures? And looking at it, at least with Superman and Batman here, they did not reuse the same torso. Because we can see that Superman's shirt collar is actually sculpted onto the figure, and likewise, Batman's cowl is also sculpted onto the figure. And you can see that while one recesses, where you have Superman's shirt collar, this one actually comes over the shirt, so it is not the same torso. But the torsos do look very similar in terms of the sculpt and the musculature. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're just based off of the same buck. Batman's figures have a little bit more of that superpower stance. It's still not quite as wide as the actual superpowers figure, but it's not quite as close together as it is on the Superman figure, thankfully. So I'm going to put Superman's cape back on. I'm going to leave Batman's cape off for a minute so we can have a look at the figure. And again, like with Superman, we can see the seam in the back, and his belt doesn't even quite line up right. But it doesn't really matter. You're going to put the cape over it anyway, so you're not really going to notice it. While this is supposed to be a hush Batman, and you can see that he's got pouches on his belt. I'll try to tilt that so the light hits it a little better. You can see that. It's not quite as detailed as Jim Lee drew it, where you've got all the buckles and seams and wrinkles and everything like that. It's a pretty simple, it looks almost more kind of like Adam West's utility belt, where it's just kind of like this rectangle with a flap on it. The emblem looks close enough to Jim Lee's. You can see that this is a much darker shade of blue and a much darker shade of gray than the original Superpowers figure, which was a very bright blue and a very light gray. And I do prefer this coloring. I like Batman being... While blue and gray Batman is my favorite version of Batman, I do very much prefer it to be a darker blue and a darker gray. And, I'm a big fan of the Adam West television show. And that version of Batman had, almost navy blue. And watching it on my TV when I was a kid, sometimes I'd watch it on a black and white TV. And it just come across as black. Or even back then, because we're talking late 70s, early 80s, when I would watch the show in reruns, my station might not have got exactly the best prints of it, and I'm watching it over broadcast TV. So sometimes this costume actually did look black and gray to me, watching it on television. But this isn't quite the same shade as Adam West. It is pretty close, again, to how it looked in the comic book art. They matched the colors, I think, very well as far as the blue and the gray. Even before I saw the artwork with where that's pretty obviously a Jim Lee version of Batman on the package, when I just saw the pictures of the figure itself, I could tell that it was based off of the Jim Lee version of Batman just based on the colors alone. Now, I say that because, like I said, in terms of the sculpt, I don't think the head sculpt is a very good Jim Lee Batman, because if we look at it, we can see that Jim Lee is very much of the school of Frank Miller with the short, stubby Batman ears. And this one has ears that I believe are even longer than the original Superpowers Batman. And I think that this is probably just intended to be a sculpt of a more modern Batman in general, than not necessarily it's not necessarily sculpted to be a Jim Lee Batman. I think it's sculpted just to be like a more modern take on Batman than the Superpowers figure, and they probably gave him longer ears because they could. And they're also pointier ears than the Superpowers figure. And I also noticed they kind of stick out to the side just a little bit more. Like this, the superpowers ears were kind of more tapered inwards slightly, and these you can see kind of taper outwards slightly. Not quite as much as like a 1939 Batman, but regardless, uh, it's a good Batman head sculpt, and I don't want to sound like I'm ragging on the head sculpt as far as saying it's a bad head sculpt, because it's not. It's a good head sculpt. But if somebody told me this was specifically sculpted to look like Jim Lee's artwork, I would say that they missed the mark. So we can see that Batman has solid fists, which again is traditional with the original Superpowers figures. Batman didn't come with any accessories, and he had solid fists. And the power action on that Batman figure was you were supposed to squeeze his legs together, and his fists would go up and down like this, so you'd have a fist fight. And again, this was at a time when probably the Batman that most kids would have been familiar with would have been Adam West Batman shows that were still in reruns. Like, even if a kid didn't read comic books, he probably saw that show on television. And a big part of that show was, the fist fight they would have towards the end of the episode where the music would kick up, and, they'd just be fighting all over the place. So it makes sense if you're going to give some kind of action to your Batman figure at that time, fist fighting is the way to go. Robin just had a karate chop. The Joker had a mallet that he swung up and down, and the Penguin had an umbrella that he was supposed to thrust at you. The umbrella had like a little blade that came out of it. So the sculpt of the figure is good. It fits in with the way that the original Superpowers figures were sculpted. You could probably stand this with your Superpowers figures, and he would fit in just fine. So let's look at the articulation. And since this is based on an 80s action figure, obviously the articulation is not as great as action figures of today. Although I will say, for an 80s action figure, it had really good articulation. But let's have a look at it. So first we have a head that turns all the way around. Now, obviously, you're not going to probably want to pose Batman like this unless you want to actually kill him off and somebody broke his neck. But you can do that if you want to. The arms, likewise, go all the way around, and these joints are really tight. I'm almost worried I'm going to break them, but they should theoretically go all the way around. This one's a little bit more manageable. Like, I kind of worry maybe this one's like caught on some glue or something, but hopefully it'll loosen up over time. And then the legs go all the way up this way at a 90-degree angle. And they even go all the way back this way. Not quite at a 90-degree angle. This one actually does, but this one, like his buttock is getting caught on something. So they go all the way back like that. So you could, when they put out the Flash, we could get some really good running poses. Let's go ahead and try it with Batman right now. Like, oh man, I can't wait for that Flash figure to come out, because that's going to look fantastic. I do wish that there was a hole in the foot so we could put him on a display stand. He doesn't come with a figure stand, which is unfortunate. But, like even if I wanted to 3D print a display stand for him, he doesn't have a hole in his foot, so I'd have to drill a hole in his foot, I guess. And then, of course, there's knee articulation, which was not at all standard on action figures in the 80s. I think the only other figures that had knee articulation were G.I. Joe, which, of course, were the best articulated figures of the 80s, bar none. But Superpowers would probably take second place just because of that knee articulation. So let's go ahead and put the cape on him, as imperfect as it is, because it has a hole in it. But, I mean, what's the Cape Crusader without his cape? So we got to get that onto him. And like I said, the C-clip that holds it on in the Superpowers style, it's not quite as thick as that C-clip, and I don't think it would hold it on quite as tightly. And but it does function. So there he is with the C-clip on there. And I gotta say that even though they used a different type of material, it still fits on there pretty well, like the way you think of Superpowers as being. Superman looks good. Batman, you can see it gets a little more bunched up here, but that's cool. I like that with Batman. Like I don't mind his cape getting bunched up so much like that. I think it looks kind of neat. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and Batman Year One was just about to come out in the comic books at the time. There was this really cool advertisement that Dave Mazzucchelli drew, where his cape was all wrinkled up at the shoulders, and I remember just staring at that picture for hours and thinking, "Man, Batman looks so cool in this picture." And then there's the second part of Batman Year One. The cover of that also has like a lot of wrinkles around the cape collar. I think this cape works out better than the Superman cape. Technically, it's shorter because even though the scallops reach all the way down to the bottom, it's the upper part of the scallop still comes to his the top of his boots, which I wish Superman's cape just came to the top of his boots, but whatever. Unfortunately, he does have a hole in his cape because of that stupid tab, so shame on them for that. But it has kind of a sheen to it, kind of an Adam West kind of sheen to it. So that's nice. But I am afraid that the cape will wrinkle up when we put him in the Batplane. So, let's go ahead and do that right now. And if you haven't already seen my review of the Batwing, go ahead and watch that because it's a neat little toy. I'm happy to have it. I kind of wonder if Mcfarlane will do like the Batmobile, since the original Superpowers Batmobile, I believe, is the best version of the vehicle that's ever been made for action figures. And he looks pretty cool sitting in that cockpit, don't he? Let's see if we can get it to close. And it does work a lot better than it did with the Kenner figure that I had in there previously. Probably because even though his ears are longer than the Superpowers figures, they're still not as long as those Michael Keaton Batman ears. So yeah, these Superpowers figures are really good, even with the hole in the cape. I still think it's a good line of figures, and it's going to be worth collecting, and I'm looking forward to future figures in the line. Like I said, I want to see Wonder Woman, I want to see the Flash, I want to see like all of the 7 founding members of the Justice League. So Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter. That's what we need to round that out. Oh, did I forget to mention somebody? Like a 7th member of the team. If that's not a tease for the next episode, I don't know what is. Hey, that sounds like it's time for me to end this episode. So if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. And let's talk about superpowers. Let's talk about Batman. Let's talk about whatever you want. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.